On a warm July day in 2011, the sun shone brightly over the bustling sands of Brighton Beach in Miami. This popular destination was known for its family-friendly atmosphere and calm waters. The beach was packed with people enjoying their summer break. Children built sandcastles, teenagers played volleyball, and families set up picnics under colorful umbrellas. Among the crowd was Sandra Miller, a 48-year-old woman weighing around 500 pounds. Sandra had come to Brighton Beach with her husband, Roger Miller, and their two children, 10-year-old Ethan and 8-year-old Lily. They had been planning this beach outing for weeks. It was a much-needed break from their busy lives. Sandra worked as a school librarian, and Roger was a mechanic. The family rarely had the chance to enjoy a day together like this. The day they had started perfectly. Sandra and Roger woke up early to pack a cooler with sandwiches, snacks, and drinks. They arrived at Brighton Beach around 10 a.m., securing a spot near the lifeguard tower. Roger set up their beach chairs while Sandra helped Ethan and Lily apply sunscreen. The children immediately ran towards the waves, eager to splash and play. Sandra watched her children with a smile as she settled into her chair, enjoying the feel of the sun on her skin. The ocean was inviting, its waves gentle and soothing. Brighton Beach was known for its calm, shallow waters, making it a favorite spot for families with young children. But hidden beneath the surface, the waters of Florida were also home to various species of sharks, including the notorious bull shark. Bull sharks were known for their aggressive behavior and ability to thrive in both salt and fresh water. They often ventured close to the shore in search of food. Although shark attacks were rare, they were not unheard of in this area. The presence of these predators added a layer of tension to an otherwise perfect day at the beach. As the morning turned into the afternoon, the beach became even more crowded. The sounds of laughter and splashing filled the air. Sandra decided to join her children in the water. She stood up and made her way to the shore, feeling the warm sand between her toes. Roger followed her with a camera, ready to capture the memories of their perfect day. Sandra slowly waded into the water, the cool waves lapping at her legs. Ethan and Lily squealed with delight as their mother joined them. The family spent the next hour playing in the shallow waters, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Around 2 p.m., as the sun reached its peak, the tranquility of Brighton Beach was shattered. Sandra was waist-deep in the water, enjoying the gentle waves when a dark shadow moved swiftly beneath the surface. In an instant, a massive bull shark, drawn by the commotion and splashing, struck with terrifying speed. The shark's powerful jaws clamped down on Sandra's leg, dragging her under the water. The sudden attack sent shockwaves through the beach. Panic erupted as people screamed and scrambled to get out of the water. Lifeguards blew their whistles, signaling an emergency. Roger, who had been standing nearby with the camera, froze in horror as he saw the water around Sandra turn red. He dropped the camera and rushed into the water, trying to reach his wife. The shark, relentless in its attack, bit down harder, tearing into Sandra's flesh. She struggled to break free, her cries of pain mixing with the chaos around her. Several beachgoers witnessing the horrific scene joined Roger in an attempt to save Sandra. They splashed and kicked at the water, trying to scare the shark away. The lifeguards sprang into action, grabbing rescue equipment and diving into the water. One of the lifeguards, Jake Thompson, armed himself with a long pole and swam towards Sandra. Jake reached Sandra and managed to wedge the pole into the shark's mouth, prying it open just enough for Sandra to pull her leg free. The shark, momentarily stunned, retreated into deeper waters. Roger and the others grabbed Sandra and began dragging her towards the shore, her leg badly mauled and bleeding profusely. The shark, however, was not done. It circled back, sensing the blood in the water. It lunged again, this time biting into Sandra's other leg. The force of the bite was enough to break bones and tear muscles. Sandra's screams grew weaker as she lost more blood. But the beachgoers did not give up. They continued their frantic efforts to fend off the shark. Jake used the pole to jab at the shark repeatedly, while Roger and another man, Tom Jacobs, tried to shield Sandra's body with their own. The shark, undeterred, bit down on the pole, snapping it in half. Jake quickly grabbed another piece of equipment, a life buoy, and swung it at the shark's head, finally driving it away. The lifeguards quickly formed a human chain, pulling Sandra out of the water and onto the shore. Blood streamed from her legs, staining the sand. The paramedics, already alerted by the lifeguards, rushed to her side with medical kits. They worked quickly to stop the bleeding, applying tourniquets and bandages. Sandra's face was pale, her breathing shallow. Roger held her hand, his eyes filled with tears. Ethan and Lily, who had been taken to a safe distance by a kind stranger, watched in horror as their mother was tended to by the paramedics. The beachgoers stood in stunned silence, some offering prayers, others crying. The paramedics decided that Sandra needed to be airlifted to the nearest hospital due to the severity of her injuries. A helicopter was called, and within minutes it landed on the beach. Sandra was carefully loaded onto a stretcher and lifted into the helicopter with Roger by her side. Ethan and Lily were taken to the hospital by a family friend who had been at the beach with them. Sandra's condition remained critical. The doctors fought to save her leg, but the damage was severe. Roger and the children spent long hours at the hospital, hoping and praying for her recovery. The beach that had once been a place of joy for their family had turned into a nightmare. The Arctic, a land of ice and mystery, stretched endlessly beneath the clear, crisp sky. Here, amid the unrelenting cold and stark beauty, a team of 3 scientists had set up their research station aboard a small vessel. Leo, a marine biologist with a penchant for understanding deep-sea creatures, had long dreamed of studying the orcas in their natural habitat. The other 2 were Kaya and Theodore. The vessel bobbed gently in the frigid waters, a speck of human ingenuity in a vast expanse of nature. Their mission was clear: study the behaviors and interactions of the orcapods that frequented these waters. For weeks, the team had observed these majestic creatures, marveling at their grace and intelligence. Orcas were known to be curious but typically non-aggressive towards humans and their vessels. This made the recent behavior all the more baffling. It was mid-July, a time when the Arctic summer bathed the ice and sea in a perpetual twilight, casting long shadows and surreal hues. The team had just completed another day of data collection and was preparing to settle in for the night. Leo was cataloging their observations, meticulously noting the subtle interactions within the pod they had been tracking. Kaya and Theodore sat on a chair chatting. Suddenly, without warning, a thundering impact shook the vessel. Leo's coffee cup toppled off the table, smashing on the floor. Startled, the team rushed to the deck, hearts pounding with the unexpected adrenaline rush. The scene that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A pod of orcas, their sleek black and white bodies cutting through the water, were circling the vessel. These creatures, usually symbols of elegance and intelligence, now seemed menacing. One of the larger males rammed the side of the vessel again, causing it to lurch violently. The team clung to the railings, eyes wide with disbelief. Leo's mind raced through possible explanations. Could they have encroached on the pod's territory? Was there something in the water that had agitated them? Kaya, her scientific curiosity piqued despite the danger, tried to capture the behavior on camera, her hands trembling as she adjusted the focus. Theodore was already assessing the damage to their vessel. Another powerful strike jolted the vessel. The orcas seemed to be working in a coordinated manner, a display of their renowned intelligence, but now turned against the scientists. Leo shouted for everyone to brace themselves as the impact sent waves crashing over the deck. The team knew they had to act quickly. Their small research vessel, sturdy though it was, would not withstand this assault for long. Leo and Kaya worked feverishly to secure their equipment, prioritizing the most valuable data and tools. Theodore focused on stabilizing the vessel, but it was clear that their best hope lay in reaching their larger support ship, anchored a few miles away. With a hastily formed plan, they began transmitting distress signals, hoping the bigger ship would receive them in time. The orcas, relentless and seemingly unyielding, continued their barrage. Time seemed to stretch as the attacks continued. The orcas' behavior was methodical, almost strategic. It was as if they were aware of the weak points in the vessel's structure. Despite the situation, Kaya noted the precision with which they struck, targeting specific areas repeatedly. It was a chilling reminder of the intelligence these creatures possessed. With the larger ship finally in sight, a sense of cautious relief washed over the team. The larger vessel represented safety and a chance to regroup, but the journey there was fraught with peril. The orcas showed no sign of relenting. Their aggression was as intense as when the assault began. The ship, upon receiving the distress signal, had already begun preparations for their arrival. The crew, experienced in Arctic conditions, understood the gravity of the situation. They deployed smaller support boats, ready to assist in the transfer of the team and their critical equipment. As the smaller vessel limped towards the big ship, the orcas' attacks intensified. It was as if they sensed the impending escape and were determined to prevent it. The team's coordination and quick thinking were put to the ultimate test. Leo and Kaya worked tirelessly to stabilize the vessel and safeguard their research, while Theodore focused on keeping the engines running, pushing them toward the sanctuary of the ship. The smaller support boats, guided by the experienced crew, maneuvered skillfully in the turbulent waters. The orcas, undeterred, continued their assault, making the transfer a perilous endeavor. Equipment was ferried across first, each piece representing hours of invaluable data and research. Leo was the last to leave the vessel, his heart heavy with the thought of abandoning the vessel that had been their home and base of operations. As he climbed onto the support boat, he cast a final glance at the boat, now heavily laden from the sustained impacts. The orcas, seemingly triumphant, continued to circle the crippled vessel. Once aboard the big ship, the team regrouped. The larger ship's sturdy structure and experienced crew provided a stark contrast to the precarious situation they had just escaped. Leo, Kaya, and Theodore, though shaken, were already discussing their observations and theories about the orcas' behavior. Leo pored over their collected data, searching for clues, while Kaya reviewed the footage, looking for any behavioral cues that might explain the hostility. The support ship's captain, an experienced Arctic navigator, also offered his insights. He had seen unusual behaviors in marine life before, often triggered by environmental changes or disruptions. Their ordeal highlighted the unpredictable nature of these intelligent predators. The Arctic, with its beauty and dangers, had once again proven to be a place where survival and scientific discovery were inextricably linked. In the humid heat of a July morning in 2007, the dense mangrove swamps of northern Australia buzzed with the sounds of wildlife. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the labyrinth of roots and muddy waters that made up the landscape. These swamps were a haven for a variety of creatures, from colorful birds and crustaceans to the apex predator of the region, the saltwater crocodile. Known locally as salties, these crocodiles were the largest reptiles on Earth, capable of growing up to 23 feet in length and weighing over a ton. Their stealth and power made them formidable hunters, often lying in wait for unsuspecting prey. The swamps of northern Australia, particularly near the fictional town of Wurrung, were their territory. On this particular morning, Jericho Thompson, a 32-year-old fisherman, was preparing for a day of fishing with his friends. Jericho, a lifelong resident of Wurrung, had fished these waters since he was a boy. His companions for the day were Sam Harris, a 28-year-old carpenter, and Tom Richards, a 30-year-old teacher. The trio had planned this outing to relax and catch up, hoping to bring back a good haul of fish for their families. They set out early, their small motorboat cutting through the still waters of the swamp. The day began peacefully, with the men chatting and laughing as they navigated through the maze of mangrove roots. They anchored the boat in a shallow area known for its abundant fish. Jericho, experienced in the ways of the swamp, waded into the knee-deep water, casting his net with practiced skill. Sam and Tom stayed in the boat, preparing their fishing lines and keeping an eye on the surroundings. The mangroves were beautiful yet eerie, their twisted roots forming natural tunnels and hiding spots. It was easy to forget, amidst the tranquility, the dangers that lurked beneath the surface. Jericho's day was going well. He had already caught several fish and was feeling optimistic. The warm sun on his back and the rhythmic sound of the water were soothing. The friends talked about their lives, their families, and their plans for the future, enjoying the rare chance to be together without the distractions of daily life. As the morning wore on, Jericho waded further from the boat, intent on finding a spot with more fish. He moved carefully, aware of the mud's sucking grip and the sharp roots that could trip him. The water was murky, making it difficult to see more than a few inches below the surface. The stillness was deceptive, masking the presence of a silent predator. Suddenly, the water erupted in a violent splash. Without warning, a massive saltwater crocodile lunged at Jericho, its powerful jaws closing around his leg with a bone-crushing force. The attack was swift and brutal, with the crocodile's ambush catching Jericho completely off guard. Pain shot through his body as he struggled to free himself, his heart pounding in his chest. Sam and Tom, still in the boat, saw the water churn and heard Jericho's scream. They jumped into action, grabbing oars and anything else they could find to help their friend. The crocodile, intent on its prey, began to drag Jericho towards deeper water, its massive body thrashing in the muddy shallows. Jericho's survival instincts kicked in. He knew that struggling too much could make the crocodile's death more likely, a maneuver that could easily drown him or tear his limbs apart. He tried to kick at the crocodile's eyes and nose, the most sensitive parts of its body, but the beast's grip was too strong. The water around them turned red with blood, the sight adding to the horror of the situation. Sam and Tom reached the scene, their oars striking the water with force. They shouted and splashed, trying to distract the crocodile. Tom managed to land a hit on the crocodile's head, momentarily stunning it. The crocodile loosened its grip on Jericho, who seized the opportunity to pull free. He scrambled through the water, his leg mangled and bleeding heavily. The crocodile, enraged and still hungry, turned its attention to Sam, who continued to beat the water with his oar. Sam and Tom worked together, their movements frantic but coordinated. They managed to push the crocodile back, forcing it to retreat temporarily. The crocodile's eyes glared at them from the water's edge, its presence a constant threat. Jericho, despite the excruciating pain, used the surrounding mangroves for cover, moving as quickly as he could towards the boat. Sam and Tom helped him, their eyes never leaving the crocodile. The friends moved through the thick roots and muddy waters, every step a struggle against the pain and fear. The crocodile, undeterred, lunged again, its jaws snapping shut inches from Tom's leg. The men continued to fend it off, their adrenaline-fueled efforts a desperate attempt to survive. Jericho's vision blurred, and his strength waned, but the sight of the boat and the thought of his family kept him moving. Finally, they reached the boat. Sam and Tom helped Jericho clamber aboard, their hands slick with blood and sweat. The crocodile made one last charge, ramming the side of the boat with its powerful body. The impact nearly capsized them, but the men held on, their determination unshaken. Tom started the motor and they sped away from the danger, the sound of the engine mixing with their ragged breaths. The men knew they had narrowly escaped death, their hearts heavy with the reality of the encounter. Jericho's journey back to the shore was a blur of pain and exhaustion. His friends did their best to stop the bleeding and keep him conscious. The boat cut through the water, each minute bringing them closer to safety. Once on land, the men carried Jericho to the nearest road, where they flagged down a passing car. The driver, seeing the severity of Jericho's injuries, rushed them to the nearest hospital. The swift actions of Sam and Tom saved Jericho's life, and their bravery and quick thinking were a testament to their friendship. It was June 2024, and Emily, a marine biologist, was snorkeling in the warm waters of the Caribbean near the coast of Belize. Emily, a 32-year-old from Miami, Florida, had dedicated her life to studying the ocean and its ecosystems. From a young age, she was fascinated by marine life and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist. Her passion led her to pursue a degree in marine biology, and she has spent the past decade researching coral reefs and their inhabitants. Emily's work took her to many beautiful and remote locations worldwide, but the Caribbean held a special place in her heart. The vibrant coral reefs, teeming with colorful fish and diverse marine species, provided a perfect setting for her studies. She loved the tranquility of the underwater world and her sense of purpose while conducting her research. On the morning of June 15th, Emily set out on a small boat with her snorkeling gear and research equipment. The weather was perfect, with clear skies and calm seas. She was excited to explore a new section of the coral reef and document her findings. As she entered the water, she felt the familiar excitement of discovery. The water was warm and clear, offering excellent visibility. Emily swam gracefully over the coral, taking notes and photographs of the vibrant ecosystem below. She observed various fish species, sea anemones, and other marine creatures going about their daily lives. It was a serene and beautiful scene, and Emily felt utterly at peace. As she continued her study, Emily noticed a sudden movement out of the corner of her eye. She turned to see a large barracuda swimming nearby. The fish, known for its speed and sharp teeth, was attracted to the shiny reflections from her diving gear. The barracuda's curious gaze made her uneasy, but she knew it was essential to remain calm and not provoke the fish. The barracuda began to follow her, its eyes fixed on the shiny objects on her gear. Emily's serene study session quickly turned into a tense escape. She knew she had to get back to the boat without making any sudden movements that might trigger the barracuda's predatory instincts. Her heart raced as she slowly began to swim towards the ship, keeping her movements smooth and steady. The boat was anchored a short distance away, and Emily focused on reaching it safely. She reminded herself of the importance of respecting marine wildlife and being aware of their behavior. The barracuda continued to follow her, its interest in the shiny gear unwavering. Emily's knowledge of marine life and her training as a marine biologist were crucial then. She understood that panicking or making sudden movements could escalate the situation. She swam carefully, focused on staying calm and reaching the boat's safety. The once peaceful waters now felt tense as she returned, the barracuda close behind. Emily continued to swim steadily towards the boat, her heart pounding with each stroke. The barracuda stayed close, its sharp teeth glinting in the clear water. Emily knew that barracudas were curious creatures, often drawn to shiny objects, but this close encounter was unnerving. She maintained her calm, focusing on reaching the safety of the boat. The distance to the boat seemed to stretch forever. Emily moved with deliberate slowness, avoiding any sudden movements. The clear waters of the Caribbean, usually so inviting, now felt like a place of hidden danger. The vibrant coral reefs and colorful fish seemed to blur as her mind focused on her escape. As she swam, Emily thought about her work and the importance of understanding marine life. This experience was a stark reminder of the delicate balance between humans and ocean creatures. Respecting their space and behavior was crucial. Emily's knowledge and experience guided her as she navigated this tense situation. The boat was now in sight, just a few meters away. Emily could see the outline of her equipment and the familiar shape of the boat's hull. She felt a surge of hope, knowing that safety was within reach. The barracuda continued to follow, its eyes still fixed on her. Emily kept her movements slow and steady, inching closer to the boat. Finally, she reached the side of the boat. With careful precision, she grabbed the ladder and began to climb up. The barracuda hovered nearby, but Emily's slow and deliberate actions kept it from becoming aggressive. She pulled herself onto the boat, feeling relief wash over her. Once on the boat, Emily took a moment to catch her breath. She looked back at the water where the barracuda still lingered. The encounter had been a reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the need for respect and caution. Emily carefully removed her shiny gear, placing it out of sight, and checked her surroundings to ensure the barracuda had lost interest. The waters near Belize's coast are known for their rich marine life and stunning coral reefs. Emily felt a renewed respect for the creatures that inhabited this beautiful environment. Her encounter with the barracuda highlighted the importance of being aware and prepared, even in familiar waters. Emily decided to take a break and reflect on her experience. She knew that her work as a marine biologist was important not only for scientific knowledge, but also for promoting safety and awareness among those who ventured into the ocean. She noted the encounter and planned to share her experience with colleagues and students. As the sun set over the Caribbean, Emily packed her equipment and prepared to return to shore. The tranquil beauty of the sea was once again evident, but Emily's perspective had deepened. She understood the ocean was a place of wonder and danger, requiring admiration and caution. Emily's return to the shore was calm and uneventful. She docked the boat and carefully unloaded her gear. The bustling activity of the beach contrasted with the serene and tense moments she had just experienced. She felt grateful for her training and knowledge, which had guided her safely through the encounter. In the following days, Emily shared her story with her peers and students, emphasizing the importance of respecting marine wildlife and being prepared for unexpected situations. Her experience was a valuable lesson for all who heard it, reinforcing the need for awareness and caution in the ocean. Emily continued her research with a renewed sense of purpose. Her love for the ocean remained strong, but her respect for its inhabitants had grown even more profound. She knew that every dive and snorkel brought new learning opportunities, and that each experience, whether serene or tense, contributed to her understanding of the delicate balance between humans and the sea. It was May 2024, and Maya, an adventure enthusiast, was kayaking in the clear waters of the Mediterranean Sea near the coast of Santorini, Greece. Maya, a 27-year-old from Athens, loved exploring the outdoors and was passionate about water sports. She often sought out new and exciting adventures, from hiking in the mountains to diving in the ocean. Her adventurous spirit and love for nature made her experience the world uniquely. Maya had been planning this kayaking trip for months. The Mediterranean Sea was the perfect destination for her latest adventure, with its crystal-clear waters and beautiful scenery. She carefully prepared for the journey, packing all the necessary gear, including her kayak, paddle, and safety equipment. She was well versed in the rules of water safety and always carried a first aid kit, knowing the importance of being prepared. On the morning of May 10th, the weather was perfect for kayaking. The sky was clear and the sea was calm, making it an ideal day for an adventure. Maya set out early, excited to explore the waters around Santorini. She paddled through the gentle waves, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of her surroundings. The coastline was dotted with charming white buildings and lush greenery, creating a picturesque backdrop for her journey. After several hours of paddling, Maya decided to take a break and enjoy a swim. She found a secluded spot away from the crowded beaches where the water was inviting and clear. She secured her kayak and slipped into the water, feeling the calm, refreshing sea against her skin. The peaceful environment made her feel at ease, and she floated lazily, soaking in the sun. Unbeknownst to Maya, a massive lion's mane jellyfish was drifting nearby. With its long, trailing tentacles, the jellyfish was almost invisible in the clear water. As Maya swam, she did not notice the jellyfish slowly approaching. The tranquil setting masked the hidden danger lurking just below the surface. As Maya dived deeper into the water, she suddenly felt a sharp, burning pain. The jellyfish's tentacles had wrapped around her, delivering a painful sting. Shocked and in pain, Maya quickly realized what had happened. Her relaxing swim had turned into a frantic struggle for survival. She had to free herself from the jellyfish's grip and return to her kayak as quickly as possible. Maya's knowledge of first aid and her quick thinking were crucial. She knew she had to stay calm and not panic. Despite the pain, she began to swim back towards her kayak, determined to escape the jellyfish's tentacles. The clear waters of the Mediterranean, which had seemed so inviting, now felt like a trap. Maya's heart raced as she reached her kayak, and her skin burned from the stings. She pulled herself onto the kayak, grateful to be out of the water. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that could be found in even the most beautiful places. Maya sat on her kayak, catching her breath and assessing her situation. The stings from the lion's mane jellyfish were painful, but she knew she had to act quickly to prevent further complications. She reached into her first aid kit, which she always kept in her kayak, and found the supplies she had packed for emergencies. Remembering the advice to use salt water for jellyfish stings, she carefully poured salt water over the affected areas. The cool liquid relieved the burning sensation, which was crucial in rinsing away any remaining tentacles and easing the discomfort caused by the jellyfish's venom. The coastline of Santorini was still some distance away, and Maya knew she had to paddle back despite the pain. She gathered her strength and began paddling steadily towards the shore. The rhythmic motion of paddling helped distract her from the discomfort, and she focused on maintaining a smooth and steady pace. The sun was high in the sky, and the clear blue waters sparkled around her, but Maya's mind was set on reaching safety. As she paddled, she thought about the jellyfish and the unexpected danger it had posed. The lion's mane jellyfish was known for its painful sting, and Maya realized how lucky she was to have escaped without more severe injuries. She reminded herself always to stay vigilant and aware of her surroundings, no matter how peaceful the environment might seem. After what felt like an eternity, Maya finally reached the shore. The familiar sight of the white buildings and bustling beach brought her a sense of relief. She pulled her kayak onto the sand and sat down to rest. A few beachgoers noticed her and asked if she needed help. Maya explained what had happened, and they offered her water and a place to sit while she recovered. Maya took some time to rest and let the pain subside. She drank water and rinsed the stings with more salt water. The kind gestures of the people around her reminded her of the importance of community and support in times of need. She felt grateful for their assistance and was glad to be on solid ground again. Reflecting on her adventure, Maya realized that this experience had taught her valuable lessons about the ocean's hidden dangers. She knew she would continue her adventures, but with a renewed sense of caution and respect for the sea. With its beauty and tranquility, the Mediterranean Sea held many secrets, and Maya understood the need to be prepared for anything. As the sun set, Maya decided to head back to her hotel. She packed up her gear and thanked the people who had helped her. The walk back along the beach gave her time to think about the day's events and how she could share her experience with others to raise awareness about ocean safety. Maya took a long shower at her hotel to wash away the salt and remaining residue from the stings. She felt a sense of accomplishment for handling the situation calmly and effectively. The pain from the stings was subsiding, and she knew she would recover fully in a few days. Maya's encounter with the lion's mane jellyfish reminded her of the ocean's unpredictable nature. She deeply respected the sea and its inhabitants, understanding that adventure always comes with risks. Her love for exploring and her respect for nature had grown even more robust, and she looked forward to her next adventure, knowing she would be better prepared and more aware. Maya shared her story with friends and fellow adventurers in the following days. Her experience highlighted the importance of knowledge and preparedness when exploring the natural world. While daunting, the hidden dangers of the ocean could be managed with the right approach and mindset. Maya's tale became a lesson for many, emphasizing the need to respect and understand the environment while pursuing one's passions. Under the glittering surface of the Pacific Ocean, an otherworldly realm thrives, hidden from the prying eyes of those above. It was into this liquid labyrinth that Jack Mercer, a professional underwater photographer, descended on a crisp autumn morning. Jack had spent the better part of his life exploring the ocean's depths, his camera capturing the mysterious and magnificent creatures that called it home. The kelp forests, in particular, held a special allure for him. They were a place of stunning beauty, where shafts of sunlight pierced the water, casting a dappled glow on the forest floor, and where the rich biodiversity promised endless photographic opportunities. On this day, Jack was eager to capture the elusive wonders of this aquatic forest. His senses were attuned to every flicker of movement. Jack moved with practiced ease. His buoyancy was perfect, allowing him to hover effortlessly as he composed his shots. Time seemed to lose its meaning as he immersed himself in his work, the underwater world wrapping around him like a comforting cocoon. He captured images of playful sea otters weaving through the kelp, of a majestic leopard shark gliding past in search of prey, and of the delicate dance of the kelp itself, swaying to the rhythm of the ocean. As he ventured deeper into the kelp forest, Jack's attention was drawn to a particularly dense thicket of kelp, its fronds weaving a complex tapestry that beckoned him closer. He approached cautiously, the muted light creating an almost ethereal glow around him. His fingers brushed against the kelp as he navigated through the narrow passages, feeling the texture of the fronds and marveling at the intricate ecosystem they supported. It was in this moment of absorption that he felt the first touch, a gentle caress at first, almost like the brush of a lover's hand, but quickly escalating into something far more sinister. The tentacles of the giant Pacific octopus emerged from the shadows, wrapping around his legs and torso with alarming speed and strength. Panic surged through Jack as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. The octopus's grip was unyielding, its tentacles covered in powerful suction cups that latched onto his wetsuit and gear, pulling him closer to its beaked mouth. Instinct kicked in, and Jack fought back with every ounce of strength he could muster. His legs thrashed, trying to dislodge the tentacles, but the octopus was relentless, its grip tightening with each passing second. The calm, methodical photographer was now a man in the throes of a primal struggle for survival. His mind raced, searching for a way out, but the octopus's strength was overwhelming, its tentacles wrapping around him in a suffocating embrace. His hand found the handle of his diving knife, strapped securely to his thigh. With a swift motion, he drew the blade and began hacking at the tentacles, the water around him clouding with the ink released by the distressed octopus. Each cut severed a limb, but the octopus was not easily deterred. It fought back, its remaining tentacles thrashing wildly, trying to pull him into the depths. The struggle was a blur of motion and adrenaline. Jack's training and experience were the only things keeping him from succumbing to the octopus's grip. His muscles burned with exertion, and his lungs screamed for air. But he continued to slash at the tentacles, his determination unyielding. Slowly and agonizingly, he began to gain the upper hand. One by one, the tentacles fell away, and with a final, desperate effort, he freed himself from the octopus's grasp. His ascent to the surface was a race against time. The exertion had depleted his air supply, and he kicked hard, his eyes fixed on the distant light filtering through the water above. The journey seemed to stretch on forever, each second an eternity as he fought to stay conscious. His vision narrowed, the edges darkening as his body demanded oxygen, but he forced himself to keep going, driven by the primal urge to survive. When he finally broke the surface, he gasped for air, his lungs expanding painfully as they drew in precious oxygen. He floated on his back, the sky a brilliant blue canopy above him, the warmth of the sun a stark contrast to the cold depths he had just escaped. For a moment he simply lay there, his body trembling with the aftershocks of the ordeal, and his mind grappling with the enormity of what had just happened. Gradually his breathing steadied, and he turned onto his stomach, scanning the horizon for his boat. It was a small speck in the distance, bobbing gently on the waves, and he began to swim toward it, each stroke a reminder of his narrow escape. The water that had seemed so inviting and serene now felt like a vast, indifferent expanse, hiding dangers that could strike without warning. Reaching the boat, he hauled himself aboard, his limbs heavy and uncooperative. He collapsed onto the deck, the familiar creak of the wood a comforting sound. For a long while he lay there, the events replaying in his mind, the adrenaline gradually giving way to exhaustion. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows as he processed the magnitude of his encounter. In the quiet of the boat, surrounded by the endless expanse of the ocean, Jack felt a profound sense of both vulnerability and resilience. The ocean, with all its beauty and mystery, was a place of unimaginable power, and he had been reminded of this in the most visceral way. His camera, which had been a constant companion in his underwater explorations, now seemed like a fragile shield against the forces that lurked in the depths. Yet as the initial shock began to fade, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The photographs he had captured and the story he would tell were testaments to the raw, untamed nature of the ocean. They were reminders of the delicate balance between beauty and danger, a balance that he had come to respect and revere. The kelp forests, with their enchanting allure, had revealed a darker side, but they had also shown him the depths of his own resilience. Hudson dove beneath the sunlit waves of the Florida coast, the sunlight filtering through the turquoise water in shimmering rays. Each dive was a new adventure, a new discovery waiting to be made. The ocean was a world of its own, full of mystery and wonder, and Hudson had dedicated his life to exploring its depths. Today he was particularly excited. He had heard reports of a rich coral reef teeming with life just a few miles off the coast. Strapped into his diving gear, he felt the familiar weight of the oxygen tank on his back and the snug fit of his wetsuit. With a final check of his equipment, he descended into the cool embrace of the Atlantic. The underwater world was alive with movement. Schools of fish darted around him in synchronized harmony, their scales reflecting the sunlight in bursts of color. Coral formations like underwater gardens bloomed in every direction. Hudson marveled at the sheer variety of marine life. Brightly colored parrotfish, elusive moray eels, and graceful sea turtles all made appearances as he swam deeper into the reef. He navigated through the labyrinthine coral structures, carefully avoiding delicate sea fans and brain corals. Every so often, he paused to examine a particularly intriguing specimen, taking notes on his underwater slate. Hudson had always been meticulous in his observations, documenting every detail with a scientist's precision. As he ventured further, the water grew cooler and the light dimmer. He knew he was approaching deeper waters where larger, more elusive creatures roamed. It was in these depths that he hoped to encounter something truly extraordinary. His heartbeat quickened with anticipation as he pushed onward, each fin stroke propelling him deeper into the unknown. Hudson's surroundings grew eerily quiet, the constant hum of the reef fading into a muffled silence. It was then that he felt it, a subtle shift in the water, a presence just beyond his field of vision. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the blue expanse around him. At first he saw nothing, but then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of movement. Emerging from the shadows was a massive Goliath grouper, its sheer size dwarfing everything else in the vicinity. Hudson's breath caught in his throat. The fish was enormous, easily weighing several hundred pounds. Its mottled, olive-green body moved with a slow, deliberate grace, and its eyes, large and unblinking, fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. Hudson knew about Goliath groupers. They were known to be territorial and could become aggressive if they felt threatened. He remained still, hoping the giant fish would lose interest and move on. But the grouper continued to approach, its gaze never wavering. Hudson could feel the tension in the water, a palpable sense of danger that sent adrenaline surging through his veins. He began to back away slowly, trying to maintain a calm and controlled demeanor. Panic is the enemy in situations like this. He had to stay focused and keep his wits about him. But the grouper seemed to interpret his retreat as a sign of weakness. It advanced more quickly, closing the distance between them with alarming speed. Hudson's mind raced. He scanned his surroundings, looking for anything that could provide shelter or a means of escape. His eyes landed on a cluster of rocks jutting out from the seafloor, forming a narrow crevice just large enough for him to squeeze into. Without hesitation, he swam towards it, his movement swift but measured. He reached the rocks and wedged himself into the crevice, his body pressed tightly against the rough stone. The grouper loomed above him, its massive jaws opening and closing in a display of dominance. Hudson's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the fish circle, its dark eyes never leaving him. He could see the powerful muscles rippling beneath its scales and feel the displacement of water with each movement. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The grouper showed no signs of retreating. Hudson knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. His oxygen supply was finite, and he needed to find a way back to the surface before it ran out. He formulated a plan, mapping out his route in his mind. If he could reach the shallower waters, he might have a chance of outpacing the grouper. He waited for the right moment, timing his move with the grouper's pattern of circling. When the fish was on the opposite side of the crevice, he pushed off from the rocks with all his strength, propelling himself forward in a burst of speed. The grouper reacted instantly, its massive body cutting through the water in pursuit. Hudson swam as fast as he could, his muscles burning with exertion. He zigzagged through the reef, using the coral formations as obstacles to slow the grouper's advance. The fish was relentless, its powerful tail propelling it forward with alarming speed. Hudson could feel the water pressure changing as the grouper closed in on him, the immense force of its movements creating turbulence that rocked him off balance. He spotted another potential refuge, a narrow canyon between two towering coral structures. With a desperate surge of energy, he darted into the canyon, the walls closing in around him. The grouper's large size worked against it here. It struggled to navigate the tight space, giving Hudson a precious few moments to catch his breath and recalibrate. The canyon led to a wider expanse of the reef, and Hudson used this opportunity to put more distance between himself and the grouper. He swam upwards, aiming for the lighter waters above. The grouper, undeterred, continued its pursuit, but the intricate coral formation slowed its progress. Hudson's lungs burned with the need for fresh air, and he glanced at his oxygen gauge. Time was running out. He burst into the open water, the sunlight filtering down like a beacon of hope. The boat was still a considerable distance away, a small speck against the vast expanse of blue. He kicked harder, his legs straining with the effort. The grouper was gaining on him again, its persistence a testament to its territorial nature. Hudson reached a cluster of boulders scattered across the sandy bottom. He knew he couldn't outswim the grouper forever. He needed a new strategy. He maneuvered around the boulders, using them as a barrier between himself and the fish. The grouper's massive body slammed against the rocks in frustration, but Hudson remained just out of reach. With a burst of inspiration, he grabbed a loose piece of coral, wielding it like a makeshift weapon. He knew it wouldn't do much damage, but it might be enough to deter the grouper and make it think twice about continuing its attack. He waited, poised and ready, as the grouper regrouped for another charge. The fish lunged, its jaws snapping inches from Hudson's face. He swung the coral, striking the grouper's side. It recoiled, more out of surprise than pain, and Hudson took advantage of the momentary hesitation to push himself away from the rocks and towards the open water once more. The boat was closer now, tantalizingly within reach. He swam with every ounce of strength he had left, his body screaming for relief. The grouper followed, but its movements were slower and less aggressive. Hudson's bold move with the coral had made an impact, however slight. He kept his eyes fixed on the boat, his lifeline to safety. As he neared the surface, he could see the outline of the boat's hull, a promise of rescue. His oxygen was nearly depleted, each breath a struggle. The grouper was still behind him, but the shallower waters seemed to be working in Hudson's favor. The fish's powerful body wasn't built for speed in such conditions. Finally, Hudson broke the surface, gasping for air. He pulled himself towards the boat, his arms and legs trembling with exhaustion. The grouper lingered below, its dark form visible in the clear water, but it made no further attempts to attack. Hudson hauled himself aboard, collapsing on the deck, his chest heaving with relief. He lay there for several minutes, staring up at the sky, the ordeal replaying in his mind. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the ocean's untamed nature and of the primal instincts that governed its inhabitants. Hudson had always respected the sea and its creatures, but today had reinforced just how little he truly understood about this vast, mysterious world. Arthur had always dreamed of visiting the Maldives. The turquoise waters, pristine beaches, and vibrant marine life called to him, promising an escape from the drudgery of his everyday life. He saved for years, meticulously planning every detail of his trip. When he finally arrived, the Maldives exceeded even his wildest expectations. Arthur signed up for a snorkeling tour on his second day, eager to explore the underwater world that lay just beyond the shore. The tour group consisted of a few other tourists, each as excited as he was. Their guide, a local named Kaleo, was knowledgeable and passionate about the marine environment. Kaleo briefed them on safety protocols and the importance of respecting marine life. He handed out the snorkeling gear and led the group to a secluded part of the reef, away from the crowded tourist spots. The water was as clear as glass, allowing Arthur to see the vibrant coral formations and a kaleidoscope of fish swimming below. He floated effortlessly, marveling at the colors and shapes. Schools of fish darted around him, their scales catching the sunlight and creating a dazzling display. He saw sea turtles gliding gracefully through the water and small sharks patrolling the reef, their movements fluid and unthreatening. Arthur felt a gentle tug on his fin and turned to see Kaleo gesturing for the group to follow him. They swam towards a more open area of the reef, where the coral gave way to a sandy bottom. Arthur was cautious, remembering Kaleo's warning about disturbing marine life. He floated above the sand, scanning the area for any sign of movement. Without warning, Arthur felt a sharp, searing pain shoot through his foot. He recoiled, gasping for breath through his snorkel. The water around him seemed to darken, and he looked down to see a stingray darting away, its tail flicking in a way that suggested irritation. He realized he had accidentally stepped on the hidden creature, and it had defended itself with a strike from its venomous barb. The pain was excruciating, radiating from his foot up to his leg. He tried to swim back to the group, but his muscles felt weak and unresponsive. Panic set in as he struggled to stay afloat. The water that had seemed so inviting now felt like a hostile environment, with every ripple and shadow a potential threat. Kaleo noticed Arthur's distress immediately. He swam over with powerful strokes, reaching Arthur in seconds. Assessing the situation quickly, Kaleo signaled for the rest of the group to surface and stay close while he tended to Arthur. With practiced efficiency, Kaleo supported Arthur and began swimming towards the shore. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain through Arthur's leg, but Kaleo's calm presence provided some measure of reassurance. As they reached the shallows, Kaleo helped Arthur onto the beach and laid him down gently. The pain had not subsided. If anything, it seemed to be intensifying. Arthur's foot was swelling rapidly, and the skin around the wound was turning an angry red. His breathing was shallow and he felt lightheaded, teetering on the edge of consciousness. Kaleo acted swiftly. He knew that stingray venom could cause severe reactions and that time was of the essence. He grabbed the first aid kit he always carried and began treating the wound. First, he washed it thoroughly with seawater, trying to flush out as much venom as possible. Then he applied pressure to slow the spread of the toxin. Arthur could barely register what was happening. His world had shrunk to a pinpoint of agony and fear. The other tourists watched in stunned silence. The idyllic setting suddenly transformed into a scene of urgency and distress. Kaleo instructed one of them to call for emergency medical assistance, knowing that Arthur needed professional care as quickly as possible. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, the tension palpable in the humid air. The island's emergency response team arrived in a small boat. Their movements were brisk and efficient. They lifted Arthur onto a stretcher and carried him to the boat, with Kaleo explaining the situation in rapid-fire local dialect. The boat sped towards the nearest medical facility. The ride was a blur for Arthur. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his body betraying him as the venom continued to spread. When they reached the shore, he was rushed into a small clinic, where a team of doctors and nurses took over. They worked quickly, administering anti-venom and painkillers, monitoring his vital signs and ensuring he was stable. Arthur's world became a haze of medical procedures and concerned faces. The pain slowly began to subside as the medication took effect, and he could feel the strength returning to his limbs. The doctors explained that he had been fortunate. The stingray's barb had missed any major arteries, and Kaleo's prompt actions had prevented the venom from causing more serious damage. As the immediate crisis passed, Arthur had time to reflect on what had happened. He had come to the Maldives seeking beauty and adventure, but he had also found a lesson in respect and awareness. Lying in the clinic bed, Arthur thought about the stingray. It had not attacked out of malice. It had simply reacted to a perceived threat. He realized how easily he could have avoided the incident if he had been more mindful of his surroundings. The guide's warnings had been clear, but in his excitement, he had let his guard down. The days that followed were a slow recovery for Arthur. He remained in the clinic under observation, and the staff was attentive and kind. Kaleo visited him regularly, bringing news from the tour group and updates on the vibrant marine life that continued to thrive just beyond the shore. Arthur's fellow tourists also stopped by, expressing their relief at his recovery and sharing stories of their own experiences. As his strength returned, Arthur found himself eager to return to the water despite the ordeal he had been through. The ocean still called to him, but now he heard its call with a newfound respect. When he was finally discharged from the clinic, he made his way back to the beach where the incident had occurred. He stood at the edge of the shore, watching the waves roll in and out, contemplating his next move. Arthur knew he would snorkel again, but this time with a deeper understanding of the world he was entering. It was July 2024, and Jake, a seasoned surfer, was riding the waves off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. Jake, a 28-year-old from Honolulu, had been surfing since childhood. Growing up on the island, he spent countless hours in the water, developing a deep love for the ocean. His former professional surfer father had taught him everything he knew about surfing and the sea. Over the years, Jake became an expert known for his skill and fearlessness in the waves. Surfing was more than just a hobby for Jake. It was a way of life. He enjoyed the thrill of catching a big wave and the peace he felt while on the water. Every morning he would head to the beach, his surfboard under his arm, ready to take on whatever the ocean had in store. The north shore of Oahu, famous for its massive waves, was his favorite spot. He knew the waters well and had a deep respect for their power. On the morning of July 18th, the weather was perfect for surfing. The sun was shining, and the waves were just right. Jake paddled out, feeling the familiar rush of excitement as he approached the surf. The water was clear and warm, and he could see the coral reefs below. He caught a few sound waves, enjoying the ride and their challenge. As he waited for the next set of waves, Jake felt a sudden, powerful jolt from below. His board shook, and he nearly lost his balance. Looking down, he saw the unmistakable shape of a giant tiger shark circling beneath him. His heart raced as he realized the danger he was in. The shark, likely mistaking his board for prey, was investigating him. Jake's thrilling surf session had turned into a fight for survival. He knew he had to stay calm and think quickly. He remembered his father's lessons about shark behavior and the importance of not panicking. Using his board, he tried to keep the shark at a distance. He moved slowly and deliberately, avoiding sudden movements that might provoke an attack. The tiger shark continued to circle, its movements slow and deliberate. Jake knew he had to get to shore, but he also knew that turning his back on the shark could be dangerous. He carefully maneuvered his board, keeping it between him and the shark as he paddled towards the beach. His knowledge of shark behavior and quick reflexes were crucial in this tense situation. With each stroke, Jake edged closer to safety. The shark followed, but Jake's calm and controlled actions kept it at bay. The beach seemed far off, but he was determined to make it. His arms ached from the effort, but he focused on getting to shore. The encounter was a stark reminder of the delicate balance between enjoying ocean sports and respecting the dangers that come with them. Jake continued to paddle toward the shore, his muscles straining with each stroke. The tiger shark maintained its steady pace, circling beneath him, its presence a constant reminder of the danger. Jake's mind was focused on reaching safety, but he also remained aware of the shark's movements. He kept his board between himself and the predator, using it as a shield. The shark's shape became more visible as he approached the shallower waters. The sunlight penetrated the clear water, highlighting the shark's sleek body and powerful tail. Jake knew that tiger sharks were curious and often aggressive, but he hoped the shallow water would deter them from following him further. He moved deliberately, avoiding any sudden splashes that might attract more attention. The shore was now in sight, and Jake could see a few other surfers and beachgoers. He felt a surge of hope, knowing that help was nearby if he needed it. However, he also knew he had to remain calm and avoid paying attention to the shark. Panicking now could make the situation worse. With careful strokes, Jake paddled into the surf zone where the waves began to break. The water here was shallower, and he could feel the ocean floor beneath him. He glanced back to see if the shark was still following. To his relief, the tiger shark had veered off, losing interest as it encountered the breaking waves. Jake breathed a sigh of relief but continued to move steadily towards the shore. When he finally reached the beach, Jake climbed out of the water, his legs shaky from the adrenaline. He looked back at the ocean, grateful the shark had disappeared. The other surfers and beachgoers, unaware of the danger he had just faced, continued to enjoy their time in the water. Jake walked up the sand, taking a moment to compose himself. The north shore of Oahu, known for its beautiful beaches and powerful waves, had given Jake another reason to respect the ocean. He knew he had been lucky, and his knowledge and quick thinking had played a crucial role in his survival. He was reminded of the delicate balance between enjoying the ocean's beauty and understanding its risks. After gathering his thoughts, Jake shared his experience with the local surf community. He wanted to raise awareness about the presence of sharks and the importance of staying calm in dangerous situations. His story would remind all surfers and swimmers to respect the ocean and its inhabitants. In the days that followed, Jake reflected on the encounter. He knew he would continue surfing, but with renewed caution. He felt a deeper connection to the ocean, appreciating its power and mystery. The experience had taught him valuable lessons about survival and respect for nature. Jake's encounter with the tiger shark became a story shared among surfers in Oahu and beyond. It highlighted the ocean's unpredictability and the need for knowledge and preparedness. Jake hoped his story would help others understand the importance of respecting the sea and its creatures. Jake carried the lessons he had learned as he returned to the waves. He remained vigilant, constantly aware of his surroundings, but he never lost his love for surfing. With all its beauty and danger, the ocean continued to be his sanctuary, where he felt most alive. The balance between thrill and caution became a part of his surfing journey, a testament to the powerful bond between humans and the sea. It was February 2024, and Alex, an experienced diver, was exploring the underwater caves off the coast of Okinawa, Japan. Alex, a 34-year-old San Diego, California marine biologist, had been diving for over a decade. His passion for the ocean began as a child, inspired by family trips to the beach and documentaries about marine life. Alex had always been fascinated by the underwater world. He loved the sense of peace and wonder of diving and the thrill of discovering new creatures and ecosystems. His work as a marine biologist allowed him to combine his love for the ocean with his desire to protect it. Alex had a deep respect for the sea and its inhabitants, understanding both its beauty and danger. On this particular day, Alex was eager to explore the underwater caves of Okinawa, known for their stunning rock formations and diverse marine life. He prepared his equipment carefully, making sure everything was in perfect condition. He checked his oxygen tanks, diving suit, and most importantly, his diving knife, which he always carried for safety. The weather was perfect for diving. The sea was calm and the visibility underwater was excellent. Alex entered the water, feeling the familiar rush of excitement as he descended into the depths. The caves were a labyrinth of narrow passages and hidden chambers, each promising discovery. As Alex navigated the underwater maze, he marveled at the vibrant coral reefs and the colorful fish that darted around him. He took his time, enjoying the serenity and beauty of the underwater world. The light from his underwater torch illuminated the cave walls, revealing intricate patterns and hidden creatures. After several hours of exploring, Alex found himself in a particularly narrow passage. He moved cautiously, aware of the limited space and potential dangers. Suddenly, he felt a strong, unexpected pull. Turning around, he came face to face with a giant Pacific octopus. Feeling threatened by his presence, the creature wrapped its powerful tentacles around him. Alex's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. The octopus's grip was firm, pulling him deeper into the cave. His serene dive had quickly turned into a fight for survival. Alex knew he had to act fast. He reached for his diving knife, determined to free himself from the octopus's clutches. The struggle was intense. The octopus's tentacles tightened around him, and Alex could feel the pressure increasing. He used his knife to carefully cut the tentacles, trying not to harm the creature more than necessary. His training and experience as a diver were put to the test as he fought to free himself. Despite the fear and tension, Alex remained focused. His determination and skill paid off as he managed to sever enough tentacles to loosen the octopus's grip. He kicked his fins powerfully, breaking free from the creature's hold and swimming towards the surface. The encounter had left him shaken but also filled with a newfound respect for the ocean's enigmatic creatures. Alex swam quickly towards the surface, his heart still pounding from the encounter with the octopus. The sunlight filtering through the water guided him upward. He could see the blue sky above, a welcome sight after the tense struggle in the dark cave. Alex took deep breaths as he broke through the surface, filling his lungs with fresh air. He was relieved to be out of immediate danger, but knew he needed to get back to the boat and assess his situation. The dive boat was anchored a short distance away, bobbing gently on the calm waters off the coast of Okinawa. Alex swam towards it, feeling the exhaustion from the ordeal setting in. His muscles ached, and his mind was racing with the events unfolding. He reached the boat and climbed aboard, grateful for its stability and safety. Once on the boat, Alex took a moment to rest and gather his thoughts. He checked his gear, ensuring nothing was damaged during the struggle with the octopus. His diving knife, crucial in his escape, was still in good condition. He always made a mental note to carry it, no matter how routine a dive might seem. As he sat on the boat, Alex reflected on the encounter. He realized how close he had come to severe injury, or worse. The giant Pacific octopus, a creature he had always admired from a distance, had shown him the raw power and unpredictability of the ocean. He deeply respected marine life, but this experience reinforced the importance of caution and preparedness. After resting, Alex decided to head back to shore. He started the boat's engine and navigated towards the Okinawa coastline. The ride was smooth, giving him time to process the day's events. He thought about how important it was to share this experience with others, especially those who might underestimate the dangers of diving. Reaching the shore, Alex docked the boat and began unloading his gear. The dive shop staff noticed his severe demeanor and asked if everything was all right. Alex assured them he was fine, but briefly shared his encounter with the octopus. They listened intently, aware of the risks of diving in such areas. Alex drove back to his hotel, replaying the events in his mind. The encounter had left a lasting impression on him. He knew he would continue diving, but with even greater respect for the ocean's inhabitants. He decided to write about his experience, hoping to educate others about the importance of safety and awareness in the water. In the following days, Alex took time to rest and recover. He visited local sites in Okinawa, enjoying the island's beauty while reflecting on his adventure. The serene beaches and vibrant culture starkly contrasted with his intense underwater experience. As he prepared to leave Okinawa, Alex felt a sense of gratitude. The experience, though harrowing, had taught him valuable lessons about the ocean and himself. He had faced a dangerous situation and came out more robust, with a renewed respect for the sea. Alex knew he would carry these lessons with him on all his future dives, always remembering the giant Pacific octopus and the day his serene dive turned into a battle for survival. It was January 2024, and Karen and her teenage son Ethan were on a yacht in the Gulf of Mexico. Karen, a 45-year-old businesswoman from Houston, Texas, had planned this trip to reconnect with her family. She had been working long hours, and her relationship with Ethan had become strained. Ethan, 16, was a bright but rebellious teenager. He felt neglected by his mother and often acted out to get her attention. Karen had always been a strong and determined woman. She built her business from the ground up and prided herself on success. However, her dedication to her work often came at the expense of her family. On the other hand, Ethan struggled with his mother's lack of attention. He loved the ocean and enjoyed the freedom it offered. But this trip felt like just another attempt by his mother to control him. The yacht trip was meant to be a relaxing getaway. Karen hoped some time on the water would help heal their rift. The Gulf of Mexico seemed perfect for a family vacation with its clear blue waters and warm weather. They were accompanied by a small crew there to ensure the trip went smoothly. The sun shone brightly on January 15th, and the sea was calm. The yacht gently rocked on the waves as the family enjoyed the beautiful day. However, an argument between Karen and Ethan soon shattered the peaceful atmosphere. The tension between them had been building for days, finally reaching a boiling point. As the argument escalated, Karen's frustration grew. In a moment of anger, she lost control and pushed Ethan overboard. The sound of the splash as Ethan hit the water brought Karen back to her senses, and she immediately realized the gravity of her actions. Her anger turned to horror as she saw her son struggling in the water. Karen didn't know that their area was known for its shark activity. Many sharks, including blacktips, are often drawn to water disturbances in the Gulf of Mexico. The commotion attracted several sharks as Ethan splashed, trying to stay afloat. The crew and the rest of the family quickly sprang into action. They threw life rings into the water and used poles to fend off the approaching sharks. In a state of panic, Ethan struggled to reach the life rings. Seeing the sharks closing in on her son filled Karen with dread and regret. She knew she had to act fast to save him. Ethan's desperate struggle in the water and the family's frantic efforts to rescue him highlighted the grave consequences of Karen's moment of recklessness. The situation had turned from a family argument into a life-threatening emergency, with Ethan's survival hanging in the balance. Ethan thrashed in the water, his fear growing as he saw the dark shapes of the sharks circling closer. The crew and family on the yacht worked frantically to save him. They threw life rings into the water, shouting instructions and encouragement. But the sharks were fast and determined. The Gulf of Mexico, known for its vibrant marine life, had become dangerous for Ethan. One of the crew members used a long pole to keep the sharks at bay, pushing them away whenever they got too close. The rest of the family, including Karen, leaned over the side of the yacht, trying to reach Ethan with more life rings and ropes. The situation was dire, and every second counted. Ethan kicked and splashed, trying to keep the sharks away from him. His energy was draining quickly, and he felt the exhaustion setting in. He reached for one of the life rings but missed it by inches. The sharks, sensing his struggle, grew more aggressive. Their sleek bodies moved swiftly through the water, closing the distance with alarming speed. Karen's heart pounded as she saw the danger her son was in. Her mind raced, filled with guilt and fear. She grabbed another life ring and threw it as far as possible, praying that Ethan could reach it. The crew continued to fend off the sharks with poles and anything else they could find. Ethan saw the life ring land a few feet away and mustered the last of his strength to swim toward it. He could feel the sharks brushing against his legs, their presence a constant threat. He reached the life ring and clung to it, his arm shaking with fatigue. The crew began to pull him towards the yacht, their faces tense with concentration. As Ethan was pulled closer to the yacht, the sharks continued their pursuit. The crew worked together, using the poles to create a barrier between Ethan and the sharks. Slowly but steadily, they managed to bring him closer to the yacht's safety. Karen watched with bated breath, her eyes never leaving her son. Finally, Ethan was within reach. The crew grabbed his arms and pulled him onto the yacht, away from the dangerous waters. He collapsed onto the deck, gasping for breath and shivering with fear and cold. The family and crew quickly wrapped him in blankets, checking him for injuries. He had a few scrapes and bruises, but was otherwise unharmed. Karen fell to her knees beside Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. The reality of what had happened hit her hard. She had almost lost her son because of a moment of anger. The crew and family members surrounded them, offering comfort and support. They were all relieved that Ethan was safe, but the gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. The yacht turned back towards the nearest port, heading to Clearwater, Florida. The crew contacted the authorities to report the incident and to arrange for medical assistance upon arrival. As they returned, the family stayed close to Ethan, ensuring he was warm and comfortable. The incident served as a harsh lesson for Karen and her family. The waters of the Gulf of Mexico, while beautiful, were not to be taken lightly. Karen's reckless action had nearly cost her son his life. The family vowed to be more careful in the future and always respect nature's power. Ethan's ordeal became a story that would be told many times, serving as a reminder of the importance of staying calm and thinking clearly in moments of crisis. His bravery and the crew's quick actions saved his life. The experience brought the family closer, making them appreciate the value of every moment spent together. The sun shone brightly over the crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas, casting a golden hue over the tranquil sea. A gentle breeze rustled the palm trees lining the shore, and the rhythmic sound of waves lapping against the sides of the boat provided a soothing background. The Williams family had been looking forward to this vacation for months. It was their chance to escape the grind of daily life and immerse themselves in the beauty and serenity of the islands. On board a boat, the family laughed and played, relishing the perfect day. 12-year-old Mason, brimming with youthful energy, teased his 14-year-old sister Amy, who was more cautious and thoughtful. Their parents, Hugo and Lisa, watched them with a mix of amusement and mild apprehension, aware of the boundless curiosity and mischief that often accompanied their son's playful nature. Hugo had spent the morning lecturing the children on the importance of safety, especially in a place like this. The waters were not only beautiful, but also home to a variety of marine life, including reef sharks. He had made it clear that while these sharks were not typically aggressive, respect and caution were paramount. Mason, however, was not one to be easily deterred by warnings. His adventurous spirit often overrode his sense of caution, much to the chagrin of his parents. As the boat drifted near a secluded reef, the family decided it was the perfect spot to take a break and enjoy the weather. The water was inviting, and the sunlight danced on the surface, creating a mesmerizing mosaic of light and shadow. Amy hesitated at first, peering over the edge of the boat into the seemingly bottomless blue. She loved the ocean, but was wary of its mysteries. Mason, on the other hand, was already poised to leap. His excitement was barely contained. Mason, filled with a sudden burst of energy, ran towards Amy, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Amy, sensing his intent, started to back away, but she was too slow. With a playful yet forceful shove, Mason pushed her off balance. She teetered on the edge for a heartbeat before falling into the water with a splash. The initial shock of the cool water was quickly replaced by a surge of panic. She surfaced, gasping for air, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Mason's laughter died in his throat as he realized the gravity of what he had done. He looked over the edge of the boat, calling out to his sister, but his voice was drowned out by the beating of his heart and the rising tension in the air. Hugo and Lisa turned at the sound of the splash, their hearts dropping as they saw Amy in the water. Instinct took over. Hugo rushed to the side of the boat, scanning the waters for any sign of danger. He knew that sharks were drawn by vibrations and the thrashing of prey. Amy's frantic movements could easily attract them. The water around Amy was deceptively calm, the surface unbroken save for the ripples from her splashing. But below, shadows began to materialize, moving with an unsettling grace and purpose. Reef sharks, curious and opportunistic, started to circle. Their sleek, muscular bodies moved effortlessly through the water, their dark eyes fixed on the source of the commotion above. Panic gripped Mason as he saw the fins break the surface. He felt a cold dread settle in his stomach, realizing the potential consequences of his actions. He wanted to jump in and help his sister, but fear paralyzed him. Lisa grabbed his arm, her face pale but determined, and looked to Hugo for a plan. Amy, despite her terror, remembered her father's lessons. She forced herself to stop thrashing and to remain as calm as possible. She floated on her back, making herself appear larger and less like prey. Her heart raced, but she kept her movements slow and deliberate, hoping to avoid provoking the sharks. Hugo grabbed a life preserver and a rope, tossing them towards Amy. He called out to her, his voice steady and reassuring despite the urgency of the situation. Amy reached for the life preserver, her fingers trembling as she grasped it tightly. Hugo and Lisa began to pull her towards the boat, their eyes never leaving the circling sharks. The sharks grew bolder, and their curiosity was piqued by the activity. One of them swam closer, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Hugo's heart pounded in his chest as he continued to reel Amy in, knowing that every second counted. He shouted for Lisa to get the boat's emergency horn, hoping the noise would deter the sharks. Lisa scrambled to the cabin, her hands shaking as she searched for the horn. She found it and ran back, pressing the button. A loud, piercing sound echoed across the water, startling the sharks. They paused, their sleek bodies twitching in response to the unfamiliar noise. It bought them precious seconds. Amy was now within reach. Hugo leaned over, grabbing her arm and pulling her up with all his strength. She scrambled onto the deck, her body shaking with adrenaline and relief. Lisa wrapped her in a towel, holding her close as she whispered soothing words. Mason stood nearby, tears streaming down his face as he watched his sister, guilt and fear etched into his features. The sharks, momentarily deterred by the noise, resumed their circling, but it was clear that their interest was waning. Without the frantic splashing and movement, they lost their initial curiosity. Slowly, they began to drift away, disappearing into the depths from which they had emerged. On the boat, the family huddled together, the weight of the moment settling over them. Hugo held Amy tightly, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. He looked at Mason, his expression a mix of anger and relief. They'd been incredibly lucky. It could have ended so much worse. The rest of the day passed in somber reflection. The joy and lightness of the morning were replaced by a sober awareness of the fragility of life. The sun was an unforgiving orb in the cloudless sky, casting sharp, scintillating rays upon the Gulf of Mexico. It was the kind of day that beckoned explorers, thrill-seekers, and adventurers to the open sea. For Kylie, a seasoned diver with a penchant for the adrenaline rush of spearfishing, it was the perfect day to hunt the elusive and prized fish that lurked beneath the waves. Kylie and his dive partner Brett had ventured far from the shore, their small but sturdy boat now a mere dot on the vast ocean surface. They had planned this trip meticulously, waiting for the right conditions when the water was clear and the currents were favorable. Spearfishing in the open waters of the Gulf required not just skill and precision, but also a keen awareness of the dangers that could suddenly emerge from the depths. Kylie was in her element. With his spear gun in hand, he descended into the clear, warm waters, the surface above gradually fading into a shimmering blur as he went deeper. Schools of vibrant fish darted around him, their scales glinting like precious gems in the filtered sunlight. He moved with practiced ease, his body a graceful, streamlined form amidst the underwater world. The hunt has been successful so far. Kylie had already speared a couple of sizable fish, their wriggling forms now securely attached to his stringer. He felt a surge of satisfaction. Each successful catch was a testament to his skill and patience. He was about to ascend, his mind already drifting to the thought of the fresh catch and the stories he would share with Brett, when a flicker of movement caught his eye. It was a blur at first, a shadow moving with unnerving speed and grace. Kylie's heart began to pound as the shadow materialized into the sleek, streamlined form of a mako shark. It was a magnificent creature. Its body was a perfect blend of power and agility. But there was no time to admire its beauty. The shark had caught the scent of the fish Kylie had speared, and it was coming in fast. Panic threatened to overtake Kylie, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew the ocean was the shark's domain, a realm where he was merely a visitor. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he knew better than to turn his back on a predator. The shark made its first pass, a swift, probing movement that sent a jolt of fear through Kylie's body. He clutched his spear gun tighter, aware that it was his only means of defense. The boat and Brett seemed impossibly far away. The Mako shark was relentless. It darted closer, its movements a blur of speed and precision. Kylie swung his spear gun, trying to keep the shark at bay, but it was like trying to fend off a lightning bolt. Kylie could feel his strength waning and his muscles burning with exertion. The adrenaline that had initially fueled his movements was beginning to ebb, replaced by bone-deep fatigue. The shark, sensing his weakening resolve, grew bolder. It made another pass, this time grazing Kylie's leg with the tip of its fin. The contact, though brief, was enough to send a wave of pain through his body, and he knew he was running out of time. Kylie knew he couldn't give up, not now. With a renewed burst of energy, he kicked towards the surface, his lungs burning for air. The shark followed, relentless and hungry. It made another lunge, and this time, Kylie struck out with his spear gun, the tip grazing the shark's snout. The creature recoiled, giving Kylie a precious few seconds to push further upwards. The surface was tantalizingly close now. Kylie could see the underside of the boat and could almost hear Brett shouting words of encouragement. But the shark was not done. It came at him again, this time from below, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his feet. Kylie's vision was beginning to blur from the lack of oxygen, and his movements were growing sluggish. Then, just as the shark prepared for another attack, a burst of bright red flared in the water. Brett had fired the flare gun, and the sudden light and noise startled the shark. It hesitated, confused by the unexpected assault. Kylie seized the moment, kicking with all his remaining strength towards the boat. Brett was waiting, his arm outstretched. With a final, desperate effort, Kylie grabbed hold and was hauled onto the deck. He collapsed, gasping for breath, his body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The shark lingered for a moment, its dark eyes watching them, before it finally turned and disappeared into the depths. For a few minutes, neither Kylie nor Brett spoke. The reality of what had just transpired settled over them like a heavy shroud. Kylie lay on the deck, the sun's warmth a stark contrast to the cold fear that still gripped him. He could hear the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull, a soothing sound that slowly calmed his racing heart. As the adrenaline began to fade, Kylie became acutely aware of the throbbing pain in his leg where the shark's fin had grazed him. Brett kneeled beside him, examining the wound with a practiced eye. It was a superficial injury, but it served as a harsh reminder of how close he had come to a far worse fate. One sweaty day in 2013, Jack Mayfield and his two friends, Reginald Butters and Edgar Simmons, launched from the coast for a ritualistic annual fishing trip in the Gulf of Mexico. The trio of retirees had been friends inseparably since boyhood, brought together by the sea and its secrets and their curiosity. That year, the trio was bent on catching a grand prize that would gape the mouths of their next-generation successors. The three had decided to embark on their escapade from the beautiful coastal town of Biloxi, Mississippi. Its historical fishing legacy was quite commendable. One could not help enjoying the serenity as they steered through the shimmering waters on their relatively small but decently kept boat. The slight memory lane effect was vivid, thinking of the many such outings they had done when they were still young. Hours slid lazily and the men received some catches. Nothing out of this world. Reginald was there to assure them that their luck was about to turn. Little did they realize that what was lying ahead would push their friendship and personal endurance to the limit. Edgar's fishing line suddenly tightened, and his exclamation indicated a feeling that he was in for a big catch. Jack and Reginald rushed to his side, their hearts thudding at the prospect of a chase. As Edgar began to draw in his catch, the boat lurched so violently that it nearly pitched the men into the water. Whatever was on the other end of that line was pulling with a pressure they had never seen. Jack held onto the railing for all he was worth, and Reginald braced himself on the cabin's wall. Edgar grunted with surprise and told them this was no ordinary fish they had hooked. Then they saw a vast, graceful manta ray breaching the surface. its enormous wingspan-like fins casting a shadow over their vessel. They had caught one of the gentle giants of the ocean by mistake. The manta ray began to thrash and twist, rocking the boat back and forth with its powerful movements. Jack scrambled to the stern with a knife, ready to cut the line if necessary. Meanwhile, Reginald rushed to the helm to maintain control of the vessel amidst the chaos. Edgar, however, hung tight to the fishing rod. He would not let this be another challenge he lost. Gritting his teeth and digging his heels into the deck, he pulled back with all his might. It was a tug of war, a manta ray versus friends. Their boat zigzagged on the water as they struggled to control its actions. He suddenly slackened the line and the manta ray disappeared into the depths. The two men gasped for breath and dripped sweat. They looked at each other rather confusedly, their hearts still in their mouths. Jack couldn't resist laughing and commenting that they had some fish stories to tell their grandkids. Reginald shook his head wryly before he commented the creature was more significant than his first car. Edgar grinned with pride, claiming no fish would get the better of them as kings of the waters. The three friends burst into laughter. The bond of camaraderie had just become thicker. Paddling back to the shore, the strength and elegance of the manta ray reminded them of the beauty of the ocean beneath. Thus, the ordeal was a story to be told for generations to come. It was a show of indestructible bonding between friends and a relationship of respect with sea creatures. 2009, Costa Rica's Pacific coastline was an adventurer's and nature lover's paradise. This country, famous for its lush rainforests and diverse wildlife, boasts scenic beaches and abundant marine life. Playa Grande was a tranquil, somewhat secluded beach, curving between dense jungle and rocky cliffs. Here, the avid kayaker Tom Everett would find his reprieve, stroking through cerulean waters in search of peace and an occasional adrenaline rush brought on by encounters with marine life. Tom was both an experienced kayaker and an amateur marine biologist. His passion for the ocean grew in childhood, influenced by stories about his fisherman grandfather. At 30, Tom had seen the world, exploring all kinds of shores and seas. Still, the waters of Costa Rica remained special for him. Late one July afternoon, Tom slid his bright yellow kayak onto the warm waters and easily paddled through the waves. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden color on the water. There were only the rhythmical sounds of the paddle slapping the water and the faraway cries of seabirds. Tom didn't have any particular destination in mind. He liked the freedom associated with open waters. He paddled further out to sea and spotted something that didn't quite resemble flotsam. A dark shape bobbed on the surface, then disappeared beneath the waves. Intrigued, Tom paddled the kayak toward the object. As he got closer, the shape became more apparent, and his heart sank. It was a majestic sea turtle entangled in discarded fishing nets. It was the largest leatherback he had ever seen. This turtle had been around for a while, its shell heavily covered in barnacles and algae. The flippers were tied, and the turtle therefore wriggled to free itself, struggling more and more by the minute. He knew he needed to think fast. He carefully slid toward the turtle, knowing it would get quite agitated. As he bent over, his kayak rocked gently so he could examine the situation. The turtle's eyes met his, and there was a moment of silent understanding. Desperation and fear showed in his gaze. Tom reached into his kayak and pulled out a small utility knife he always carried for emergencies. He began cutting through the tangled nets as fast and carefully as possible. The turtle thrashed its powerful flippers, causing waves that threatened to capsize the kayak. Tom struggled to maintain his balance while his heart seemed to pound in his chest. He could feel the adrenaline and knew this was a chance he was taking, as any wrong move would land him in the water, putting him and the turtle in greater danger. Those minutes were like hours as Tom continued slicing up the nets. His hands were trembling with effort, and his forehead was streaming with sweat. The sun beat on his head relentlessly, and salt water stung in his eyes. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The turtle's life depended on him. Just as Tom thought he was succeeding, a particularly violent thrash from the turtle nearly toppled him. Water slashed over the sides as the kayak tilted precariously. He clutched the edge of the kayak with one hand to steady himself, while hanging grimly onto the knife. His muscles screamed at him in agony, but he shrugged off the burning and pressed on with some hitherto unknown inborn will to survive. The final net seemed to drop away after what appeared to be an eternity. A second, the freed turtle floated unmoving, unable to believe in its new freedom. Tom watched, amazed, as the creature slowly moved, testing its unbound flippers. Then with one mighty stroke it swam into the ocean's depths. Tom sat back in his kayak and started breathing heavily. Relief and pride overflowed in his veins. He had done it and saved the turtle. A sense of inexpressible joy accompanied him while he paddled back to the shore. The experience had been tiring, scary, and highly mind-racking, but it was one of the most rewarding moments in his life. Back on the beach, Tom told his tale to a few locals who had gathered around him. They listened intently, their faces a picture of disbelief mixed with admiration. Wildlife rescue stories weren't anything new in Costa Rica, but for one kayaker, to do so was out of the norm. For days afterward, Tom couldn't get the image of that turtle off his mind. He wondered if it had found its way to safety, and if it had reunited with its pod. The encounter impacted him and made him respect the ocean and its inhabitants more than ever. The word about Tom's story spread, and soon after a local conservation group contacted him. Having listened to his story, impressed by his courage and determination, they invited Tom to join the efforts to protect Costa Rica's marine life. Tom needed little convincing. He felt that this adventure had opened a new page of life for him. For the next couple of years, he worked indefatigably with the group involved in conserving the ocean and its creatures. Beach cleanups, rescue missions, and research projects. This experience also motivated Tom to write a book to share his story with the world and raise people's awareness about threats to marine life. The book, Kayakers' Struggle with a Giant Sea Turtle, became an astonishing bestseller, touching the hearts of many people worldwide. He nurtured an excellent appreciation for the ocean and its creatures through his work and writing. He proved that one person can make a difference, that even small acts of kindness and bravery can make a big difference. Years later, that fateful day came to mind as he paddled along the Costa Rican coastline. He had not forgotten the turtle's eyes, frightened but hopeful, reminiscent of nature's beauty and the delicate balance of responsibility one has when being a part of it. From lonely kayaker to impassioned conservationist, Tom Everett's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and compassion. He struggled with the giant sea turtle, which became defining and changed his life and that of many others. He knew he made a difference every time he set out on the water, one paddle stroke at a time. The azure waters off the coast of Palau, an archipelago in the western Pacific Ocean, beckoned snorkelers and divers worldwide in 2007. Located 500 miles southeast of the Philippines, the tiny republic was popularly claimed to host some of the world's most pristine coral reefs and diverse marine life, with an equally rich maritime history and tribal traditions. The waters were full of colorful fish and brilliant coral formations, but held more dangerous deep denizens. A marine explorer, Emily Whitaker, was a great enthusiast of snorkeling. She had flown into Palau to get a feel of the underwater world. She was equipped with her swimming and snorkeling gear and an underwater camera, all set to capture the rich marine biodiversity in images that these waters were famous for, leaving from the small, lively town of Koror. The morning sun danced off the water's surface as Emily paddled gently away from her rented boat. It was almost surreal, fine at that moment. Colored fish fleeing in and out of the coral and the sound of breathing rhythmically through the snorkel. She felt at peace, immersed in the beauty of the underwater world. Emily was a wary soul, always mindful that the ocean was as dangerous as beautiful. But the day was so glorious that for a moment her vigilance was laid down. She floated, mesmerized by the dazzling school of parrotfish, and did not see the almost ethereal, translucent creature drifting noiselessly closer. Mistakenly considered a jellyfish, the Portuguese man-o'-war was a siphonophore, a colony of specialized minute individuals called zooids. A gas-filled bladder kept it afloat while its venomous tentacles trailed menacingly below, sometimes reaching lengths of 30 feet in length. Because she was swimming in snorkeling gear, her first view of the creature was through the distorted lens of her snorkel mask. The purple-blue hues, the delicate sail-like structure at the surface. She had seen other jellyfish and thought this was another variety of the harmless type. Interested by its appearance, she swam closer to it. It was not until she felt the first excruciating sting that she realized her mistake. The pain was sharp and instant in burning nature, like the firing of every single nerve in her body right off. She looked down in horror to see the long, twisted tentacles wrapping around her arm and leg. Panic surged through Emily as the venom began to take effect. Her muscles were contracting painfully. She struggled to move. She knew that the venom could cause paralysis, and if she didn't act quickly, she might not make it back to the boat. She began to kick and thrash about, using the last ounce of her strength to break free from the tentacles. The harder she struggled, the more tightly they seemed to hold her. She felt the venom spreading, the pain growing with each passing second. She had read about the effects of the venom of the Portuguese man-o-war: severe pain, muscle cramps, and possibly respiratory distress. She weighed her options as her mind raced with thoughts. She knew she couldn't afford to pass out in the water. Emily grasped her snorkel knife, a small yet sharp blade she always carried just in case. With shaking hands, she began cutting at the tentacles wrapping around her. The knife slid through the slimy, almost translucent tendril, but every cut released more venom onto her skin. She screamed into her snorkel, the sound muffled into the water as she worked frenetically to end her tether. Finally, with one last, desperate slash, she cut through the final tentacles holding her. But the damage was done. Her body was racked with pain, and she could feel herself weakening. She turned toward her boat, now merely a speck on the horizon. Swimming was an agonizing effort in each stroke. Her vision blurred. She had heavy, lifeless limbs. She knew she had to keep moving and fighting, but the venom was relentless. Emily's struggle was overseen by David Ramirez, captain of the boat. From the deck, he had surveyed his passengers, and the frantic movements that were Emily stuck out in his sight. He grabbed his binoculars and witnessed a recognizable event: frantic splashing and painful attempts to swim from running into a Portuguese man-o-war. David didn't hesitate for a moment. He fired up the boat and powered toward Emily, careful not to make too much of a wake and further frighten her. When he was close enough, he threw a life preserver into the water and shouted for her to hang on tight. Dazed, Emily saw the life buoy and summoned the last strength to reach it. David pulled her toward the boat, his heart pounded with urgency. Safely aboard, he looked at her angry welts and skin pallor. He knew she needed immediate medical attention. David radioed for help and zipped back to Koror. They rushed Emily to the nearest medical facility, where the doctors treated her for the stings and relief from pain. The poison was fast-acting, but swift care stabilized her. For the next few days, Emily replayed the near-death experience in her mind. It had been an eye-opener to the dangers at sea, even to very good snorkelers. She felt grateful to be alive and recognized that David's presence of mind saved her life. Emily Whitaker's encounter with the Portuguese man-o-war changed her life. It showed her how unpredictable the ocean could be, and that she needed always to be prepared and show respect. Her experience heightened her awareness and became a vital lesson within the snorkeling and diving community. The waters of Palau were as beautiful and inviting as ever, but to Emily, they held a deeper, more profound meaning. She had gone through the ocean's fury and emerged at the other end with a story that would remind everyone to tread with care in this mesmerizing yet dangerous underwater world. Jake couldn't believe his luck. The waves off Jeffreys Bay, South Africa's coast, were pumping today. The 28-year-old surf instructor had scored the conditions of a lifetime: glassy 6-foot barrels peeling perfectly along the point break known as super tubes. It was midsummer in the southern hemisphere in 2010. Jake had surfed Jeffreys Bay many times before, but rarely saw it, epically uncrowded and firing on all cylinders like this. Most of the usual crews of locals were gone, chasing the rumors further down the coast to another equally famous reef near Cape St. Francis that often handled the biggest, most prime south swells. But Jake didn't mind having super tubes virtually to himself on that day. Just a short time after, in his black 4/3 wetsuit with sunscreen slathered on, Jake waxed up his favorite 6'3" thruster and walked down to the water's edge. He stopped momentarily, checking the lineup carefully for marine life before heading out through the churning whitewash. It was just a bit after 11 a.m., and the offshore southwesterly winds were still light and glassy, giving way to ideal surf at that size. 15 minutes later, Jake was sitting pretty in the lineup, casually treading water for the first few minutes approximately 200 meters offshore, waiting patiently for his next set wave. The ocean looked just incredible today. The sapphire surface was otherwise unblemished, save for the distant ripples Jake made and the little gulls cruising by. On his third wave, with the emerald green wall dropping to his left, Jake rode it in style, disappearing into the barrel for 2 seconds before kicking out. After being spit out from the giant tube, he couldn't wipe the smile off his face, so he paddled back to the peak for another go. Only after about 20 or so waves over the next hour did Jake get a slight ache in his arms and back from all the paddling against the current. He figured he had enough surf for one day anyway. Besides, the tide was coming in, and what had once been glassy was getting choppier and blown out. Jake kicked out of one last wave and started his long, stiff paddle back into shore, a few hundred meters out. A prominent shadowy figure gracefully patrolled the depths about 15 feet from him. Jake stopped and steadied to get a perfect look. That's when his heart jumped into his mouth because a giant bull shark with the telltale oblong snout and stocky body broke the surface, sending a wake of frothy brown browsers churning. Bull sharks were sufficiently common in these waters off South Africa during the late spring and summer months when the waters warmed up. But attacks were still sufficiently rare for most surfers. These combative members of the Requiem shark family were notoriously ill-tempered compared to their oceanic white-tip or black-tip reef cousins. The bull shark had scented him out and was turning back on him for a closer inspection. An eye now balefully flashed, mistaking Jake's black wetsuit and tiny paddling motion for the shadow of a seal. He could feel his heart banging in his chest as his eyes flicked back towards the distant shoreline, still hundreds of meters away. That was most definitely not good. Jake, empathizing with his surf instructor training, knew that the worst thing to do was panic or make any sudden erratic movement that could provoke an attack. The bull shark was now coming out of the back surf zone. A dorsal fin knifed through the surface about 20 meters away, making a beeline straight towards Jake. Time stood still as Jake made an ageless effort to carefully shift his prone body, so that he now faced the shark head-on, only to see the cold, lifeless obsidian orbs and attempted to backpaddle ever so cautiously to the safety of the shallows. The 4-meter bull shark turned briefly, showing its thick flanks and powerful tail, before it glided to coast just a dozen feet away from the surfboard under Jake. Its small, beady eyes looked razor-sharp, no doubt taking in every single kick and splash Jake made. Jake was trying very hard to keep his almost chronic body and limbs under control, to be as still and non-threatening as he possibly could. He certainly did not want to provoke an attack by wildly splashing about. The bull shark edged Jake, menacingly closing in around him, the dark dorsal fins searing out of the water's skin like a menacing periscope. Jake felt his heart beating out of his chest as he tried to backpaddle toward the shallows, with all the nonchalance he could muster. Every few seconds, the shark would drop under and reappear closer than before, assessing Jake from a new angle. Jake knew he would resist the urge to panic and thrash around, which would surely set the shark into hunting mode. It reminded him to move slowly and with purpose. After what seemed an eternity, the shark began to lose interest as its circling radius widened slightly when it kicked up its tail for more powerful bursts of speed. Then the vast bull shark did much more of a corkscrewing tight turn as if setting up for an attack run, and Jake had his stomach drop away again as the beast's thrashing tail funneled it directly at him at ramming speed. He screwed his eyes tightly closed and turned his head away, bracing for the bone-crushing impact. Just as a last moment, it sheared off and continued circling, just out of range of the defense. Breathing hard through his nose, Jake opened his eyes and realized that the snapping he thought the shark was preparing for was more like a feint, setting up a series of moves to gauge his reaction. He knew he couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Remaining completely still like a statue, Jake continued his harrowingly slow back paddle, inching toward the safety of the whitewater shore break. His arms shook from lactic strain, aching with every movement, as he fought to stay calm and focused. After what felt like an eternity, Jake finally felt the leash line go taut on the shallow sandbar, allowing him to attempt to stand. He slowly and carefully got his feet beneath him on the hard-packed sand and began standing up in the swirling shore break. The bull shark continued to stalk nearby, making a few passes as if acting like a sentry. Jake's breath caught in his throat each time the telltale dorsal fin disappeared beneath the surface, unsure if the shark was giving up the chase or lying in ambush. He reached a standing depth after a few tense minutes of navigating the shifting shoreline without taking his eyes off the shark. He then began furiously body surfing over the remaining waves without thinking, occasionally glancing back at the shark. Finally, Jake's feet struck the solid sand of the beach, and he broke into a full sprint, not stopping until he was at least 100 yards from the water's edge. Turning to face the ocean, he squinted into the afternoon glare, trying to catch his breath. The bull shark had paused, abandoned the chase, and swum in another direction. Jake's knees gave way with the release. The gravity of how close he'd come to an attack sunk in. He held his board and gear and set the long walk up the beach toward the car, his head still reeling from the encounter. When he returned to the house that evening, Jake grabbed a glass of wine, sat down, and wrote each detail of the day's events in his journal. Over the following weeks, Jake reran that experience repeatedly in his head. Although he was beyond grateful not to be hurt, he was shaken. It made him jumpy, settling into future surfing sessions with a watchful look at the ocean's depths. That near-death experience with the bull shark was a wake-up call for him as to how fragile life could be. From then forward, he resolved to avoid any unnecessary risks. The power of the ocean was to be respected. On a crisp August morning in 2009, the serene waters of Puget Sound, Washington, were the perfect setting for an adventurous kayaking trip. The air was cool and the sky was a clear, vibrant blue. The calm waters mirrored the picturesque surroundings, making it an ideal day for outdoor enthusiasts. Among the group of friends eager to explore the natural beauty of Puget Sound were David Parker, a 30-year-old outdoor instructor, his best friend Kevin Smith, a software engineer, and two sisters, Laura and Alda Johnson, both in their late 20s. The friends had planned this kayaking trip for months, anticipating the chance to escape their busy lives and enjoy the tranquility of nature. David, being the most experienced, led the group, giving a brief overview of the route and safety tips. The group set off from a small, secluded beach, their kayaks gliding smoothly over the glassy surface. The sound of paddles dipping in and out of the water was rhythmic and soothing. Puget Sound was known for its rich marine life, including the majestic orcas, also known as killer whales. These apex predators were a common sight, often seen swimming gracefully in pods, their dorsal fins slicing through the water. While generally known to be curious and playful, orcas had also been observed displaying aggressive behavior, especially when protecting their young or hunting. As they paddled further from the shore, the friends marveled at the beauty around them. Seals basked on nearby rocks, and seabirds called out as they soared overhead. It was a perfect day, filled with laughter and the excitement of discovery. The group stayed close together, enjoying each other's company and the shared experience. Around noon, they decided to take a break and drifted near a small island. They anchored their kayaks and took out snacks and water from their dry bags. David pointed out the distant shape of an orca pod, its black and white bodies visible as they breached the surface. The sight was mesmerizing, and the group watched in awe. David explained how orcas in Puget Sound were part of two distinct groups: resident orcas, which primarily fed on fish, and transient orcas, known for hunting marine mammals. He shared interesting facts about their social structure, communication, and hunting techniques. The group listened intently, fascinated by the intelligence and power of these creatures. After their break, they resumed paddling, venturing into deeper waters. The initial excitement of spotting the orcas had given way to a sense of caution. They knew that while orcas rarely attacked humans, their size and strength made them formidable creatures. As the afternoon sun began to descend, casting long shadows on the water, the group noticed the orca pod drawing closer. At first, it seemed like a magical moment, a chance to observe these magnificent animals up close. The friends paddled slowly, careful not to disturb the pod. But then the mood shifted. The orca's movements became more erratic. The largest orca, a male with a tall, prominent dorsal fin, swam directly towards David's kayak. With a powerful thrust, it bumped the kayak, almost capsizing it. David struggled to keep his balance, his heart racing. The friends exchanged worried glances, realizing that they were in a dangerous situation. The orcas began circling the kayaks, their behavior becoming increasingly aggressive. The water churned as they swam around the group, creating waves that rocked the kayaks. Kevin's kayak was hit next, the impact nearly knocking him into the water. He gripped his paddle tightly, trying to steer away from the pod. Laura and Alda, both visibly shaken, tried to stay close to David and Kevin. The orcas continued their assault, bumping and nudging the kayaks with alarming force. David shouted instructions, urging everyone to remain calm and use their paddles to fend off the orcas. The largest orca made another pass, this time ramming into Alda's kayak. The force was so strong that it cracked the hull, water quickly seeping in. Alda screamed in terror as her kayak began to sink. Laura paddled frantically towards her sister, trying to help, but another orca blocked her path. David and Kevin managed to reach Alda just in time. They grabbed her arms and pulled her into Kevin's kayak, which wobbled precariously under the added weight. The orcas, undeterred, continued their aggressive behavior, their sleek bodies moving swiftly through the water. In a desperate attempt to escape, the group paddled towards a nearby fishing boat that had appeared on the horizon. The boat's captain, seeing the distress, steered towards them, honking the horn to scare off the orcas. The sound momentarily distracted the pod, giving the friends a brief respite. David, Kevin, Laura, and Alda paddled with all their strength, their muscles aching and their breaths labored. The orcas followed closely, their dorsal fins cutting through the water like knives. Just as it seemed the orcas would make another strike, the fishing boat arrived, positioning itself between the kayakers and the orcas. The boat's crew threw ropes to the kayakers, pulling them aboard one by one. Alda was first, her face pale and her body trembling. Laura followed, then Kevin, and finally David, who refused to leave until he was sure his friends were safe. The orcas circled the boat for a few moments longer before finally retreating into the depths of Puget Sound. The friends collapsed on the deck, their bodies shaking from exhaustion and fear. The boat's captain radioed for help and they headed back to the mainland. The group remained silent, processing the terrifying encounter they had just survived. As the boat approached the shore, the friends began to recover from their ordeal. They knew they had been fortunate to escape with their lives, thanks to the timely arrival of the fishing boat. The experience had left them with a newfound respect for the sea and its inhabitants, a reminder of the thin line between awe and danger. Their kayaking adventure had turned into a harrowing tale of survival, one that they would never forget. In the summer of 2015, the limpid waters of the small island of Curaçao, situated in the southern part of the Caribbean Sea, summoned thrill-seekers and nature enthusiasts worldwide. With its intense coral reefs and marine life, the island of Curaçao became a haven for divers and underwater photographers. They didn't know that nature's whims could turn a peaceful dive into a heart-pounding encounter just a few feet down the surface. Melissa Gibbs, a 32-year-old amateur diver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, had long since been driven by a passion to capture the underwater beauty of the Caribbean. Now equipped with her trusty underwater camera and the newly developed talent in marine photography, she hoped it would be the diving experience of a lifetime. One particular day, Melissa dove with a small group of divers and their leader, Javier Rodriguez. As they were about to dive into the famous Blue Room Cave, Javier briefed them on the safety measures and ensured they knew how to treat the marine life they would encounter. Melissa nodded attentively. Although excited, she adjusted her mask again and checked her equipment. The group descended into the warm blue waters and followed past the colorful fish darting between the coral formations. Melissa was at the back of the group, taking her time for that perfect shot of a school of yellow-striped grunts. She didn't realize how engrossed she was in taking pictures and drifted away from the leading group. As Melissa focused her lens onto a particularly vibrant piece of coral, she noticed a flash of silver. At first, she had thought it was just another fish, perhaps a tarpon or a large snapper. As she turned to get a better look, Melissa skipped a heartbeat. There, not far from her, floated one of the biggest great barracudas she had ever seen, its sleek body almost 5 feet long. Melissa had learned about barracudas during her diving courses. Though attacks on human beings were rare, the predators were known for their curiosity and occasional aggression in case of provocation or attraction to shiny objects. With growing unease, Melissa realized that the metal parts of her camera were gleaming in the sunlight and filtering through the water. The barracuda's cold, staring eyes seemed riveted on Melissa as it leisurely circled her. Her mind raced to reach back into her training, forcing herself to breathe easily and move extremely slowly. Any sudden movements could trigger a barracuda's predatory instincts. She spun around, feeling that spurting panic. No one was in view. She was alone with this menacing creature. Her mind had started racing with what to do. It was as if the barracuda had sensed her indecision. One surged forward, jaws open, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Melissa jerked up her camera, more of a shield than to take a picture. The snout bumped into the camera, and Melissa flinched, hitting the shutter button. A flash lit up the silver scales for an instant. The light surprised the predator, which moved backward a few feet. Melissa took this chance to back out from there slowly, keeping her eyes locked on the barracuda while trying to find her diving group. She could feel the pounding of her heart in her chest. The sound of her breathing was loud in her ears. However, the barracuda still needed to be finished with what it had wanted with her. It started circling again, faster and closer to her each time. Melissa knew she had to fasten up. She remembered Javier's instructions about aggressive sea life. Keep your eyes locked on the creature, remain upright in the water, and slowly swim upward. Melissa made a slow, cautious ascent, her eyes never leaving the circling barracuda. She moved her fins in languid, deliberate motions to not stir the water unnecessarily. The barracuda followed, matching her pace up through the water column. When Melissa thought she couldn't stand this tension anymore, she heard a faint noise. Turning slightly, she saw Javier and the rest of the group swimming toward her. Her heart swelled with relief, knowing she was okay for now, but she also knew she shouldn't drop her guard yet. Javier reacted quickly, gesturing to form a close circle around Melissa. With their combined strength, the group began ascending, forming a human wall between Melissa and the tenacious barracuda. The predator, now having multiple divers to compete with, looked to lose interest. With a flick of its tail, it disappeared into the blue depths. Coming up to the surface, Melissa's legs felt like jelly. She was grateful for the support of the other divers, which enabled her to get back aboard the boat. Finally, safe on board, the adrenaline that had overcome her while the action was taking place started to wear off, and she began shaking. The near miss on Melissa made Javier decide to shut down the dive and head into shore. Sailing back into the harbor, Melissa retold her tale of underwater woe. Her voice was still shaking a little as she told it. The other divers listened in stunned silence, offering her supportive words and congratulations on her level-headedness under pressure. As Melissa was to fly back home to Milwaukee for the next few days, she decided not to let this experience get her away from underwater photography. She wanted to use her expertise to teach others about marine safety and conservation. She even laughed and said that she would call the barracuda Flash, to remember the camera flash that had saved her life. As Melissa boarded her flight home, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. She had come to Curacao in search of the perfect shot. Though that hadn't been captured precisely as she had envisioned it, she was leaving with much more. A story of survival, resilience, and a much deeper connection to the ocean she loved. It was the summer of 2011 when a quiet stretch of water in the Exuma Cays of the Bahamas was the setting for an unlikely family drama. The Hollisters, who had long been pegged as one of those who take the yearly vacation extravaganzas, chose a week-long yacht expedition through the crystal waters of the Caribbean to celebrate matriarch Linda Hollister's 70th birthday. The Hollister bunch boarded this adventure on a chartered luxury 100-foot yacht. The captain was an experienced sailor named Eustace Weatherby, but everybody called him Captain with a colorful epithet. Captain Eustace Weatherby, who always wore Hawaiian shirts. The family comprised Linda, her son Frederick, his wife Penelope, and their 3 children. Cassandra, 15, Tommy, 10, and Eloise, 7. Tommy Hollister was a freckle-faced boy with an overactive imagination and a newfound passion for pirates. He was practically glowing with delight for being granted the chance to take the trip. Over those first 2 days of the cruise, he could be found prancing around the ship's deck in an eye patch he'd made, holding a plastic sword and insisting everyone call him Captain Redbeard. Towards the 3rd day of their sailing journey, the yacht dropped anchor somewhere near a desolate cove with waters in a tempting shade of turquoise. The family was having a lazy breakfast on the deck when Tommy, amidst some mischief inspired by pirates, sprang into action. One can see its swashbuckling action. Tommy crept up behind his unsuspecting grandmother, admiring the view from the starboard side, and belted out his best pirate growl. With that, he playfully nudged Linda. What was supposed to be a harmless prank went very wrong when an unsuspecting Linda quickly caught off center, rocked forward, and then somersaulted over the edge with a cry of surprise. When Linda hit the water erupted with the biggest splash, and for a brief moment, all was silent. Then pandemonium broke out. Frederick raced to the side of the boat, yelling for his mother. Penelope, her face white as a ghost, grabbed Tommy's shoulders, shaking him as she shouted to know what he had done. It immediately aroused Captain Weatherby, who had been on watch in the wheelhouse. His practiced eyes quickly grasped the nature of the emergency, and he began shouting orders to a small crew to prepare for a rescue attempt. With the sudden impact, Linda floated in the water, her silver hair clinging to her head, spraying and shouting for help. Meanwhile, panic in the family multiplied, as Cassandra, looking over the railing, observed several dark shapes gliding underneath the surface, moving around the goldfish pool where Linda was floating. Cassandra shouted about sharks. Sharks had broken her voice. Sure enough, 3 reef sharks, attracted by the commotion, arrived to examine what was happening. Not particularly dangerous to humans, the sharks transformed what was now a desperate situation into a scene from a movie. By this time, Tommy realized he had made a terrible mistake. His high seas escapade was over. In its place was the cold fear that he had abandoned his grandmother to a watery grave. Captain Weatherby calmly set to work with the boat crew to lower the tender, a small motorized boat, to put ashore. As they prepared the rescue craft, he addressed Frederick and the burly first mate of the ship, Gus, and told them they should splash and make noise with long poles to frighten the sharks away. Penelope's arm wrapped its way around Tommy's shoulder, a maternal instinct gripping her heart. She hugged him close while she said all would be okay, even as her voice was laced with uncertainty. While in the water, Linda focused on staying calm. She recalled her days as a competitive swimmer and concentrated on treading water with smooth, easy movements to avoid alarming the sharks. Despite her efforts, the endurance required was already taking a toll on her. As the tender was being lowered, Eloise, the youngest Hollister, had an idea. She ran to her cabin and returned with her prized possession, an oversized, rainbow-colored inflatable unicorn float. Without a second thought, she threw it overboard near Linda, who was struggling in the waves. Seeing a giant inflatable unicorn in a shark-patrolled ocean might have been amusing in another situation. However, it turned out to be a stroke of genius. When Linda spotted the float, she swam toward it and grabbed hold, gaining some much-needed buoyancy and a buffer between her and the curious sharks. Captain Weatherby and Gus in the tender squeezed full speed toward Linda. The sharks would hold at this enigmatic distance. Apparent confusion regarding the arrival of the colorful intruder into their habitat was prevalent. With difficulty, they managed to pull Linda into the little boat, which was still clutching the unicorn float. Chattering her teeth, Linda couldn't help but chuckle through this ordeal at the insanity of the rescue. Quipping between chattering teeth, she said she never thought she'd be so happy to see a unicorn. Once aboard the Sea Siren, Linda was towel-wrapped and examined for injuries. To everybody's surprise, she was pretty whole, apart from a few scrapes. The entire family could now breathe a sigh of relief. Theirs were eyes teeming with tears, holding one another. Red-eyed and puffy, Tommy came over to his grandmother's seat. He felt tremendous guilt, the words barely out in an apology. She hugged him with the forgiving power only a grandma has after such an ordeal. She told him that though what he had done was extremely dangerous, she knew he had not meant any harm. However, she insisted that he understand that actions have consequences, particularly near the sea. That act became a turning point in young Tommy's life. While his love for pirates remained, it was now accompanied by a newfound respect for the sea and its inhabitants. He spent the rest of his vacation studying marine life, particularly sharks, and learning about their essential role in the aquatic ecosystem. His fascination grew with every account he read from Captain Weatherby, deepening his appreciation for the ocean's wonders. The incident in the Exuma Cays was a wake-up call for the Hollisters. They displayed continued love for the ocean, but handled it with new respect and caution. Tommy learned his lessons quickly and carried them until he became a marine biologist specializing in shark behavior and conservation. And so, what could have been a tragedy turned into a story of family resilience. all thanks to an unassuming inflatable unicorn. And a reminder that sometimes life's most essential lessons show up in the strangest packages, or floats.